Jai Hind. So just to be clear, this is a horror channel. It's not going to be a horror channel. I'm doing one show, and it's not going to be even a regular show so much as when I have something to speak about on the subject, I'm going to do this show. All that's really just to say that I don't want to give the misconception that tomorrow you're going to wake up and Visited by Voices is going to be about Indian action movies. But Indian action movies have become a big part of what I consume as a film fan. And there's a lot of reasons that happened. And this first video, I really just want to take you through my journey from a hardcore horror fan who grew up with best friends named Norman Bates, Godzilla, and Jason Voorhees to where I am now. And where I am now is I get more excited when I see a big action spectacular opening in my local theater than I do really for anything that's coming out of Hollywood ever. And that includes my cherished horror films. It's no secret in the community that I really am just done with the long-running franchises. I never want to see another Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Nightmare on Elm Street, Chucky, or Friday the 13th. I just don't want to see them. I have those films. There's the ones that I love. There's the ones that I was disappointed by. There's the ones that I really wish weren't ever cast onto celluloid. But the truth is, I've seen all those things. I have them. I don't need more. Now, you may disagree, and I'm never going to tell you what you should like or dislike. I'm never going to try and be some kind of life coach of horror. It's ridiculous. But I can say that until we see a revolution in the genre, unfortunately, I'm going to find myself getting much more excited about these crazy imported action films. Because there's so much in these films that either I haven't seen before or I haven't seen from this perspective before. And that's exciting. And exciting is what used to drive me to the cinema. I used to want to see and experience and feel things that I couldn't in my regular life. And the horror genre used to be a perfect place for that. Unfortunately, as we watch all these remakes and late-in-the-day sequels and requels and what have you, it all feels so familiar. And for some people, that's a security blanket, and I get it, and they just want more of what had made them feel great at a certain time in their life. I tend to be a little bit older than most of our community. Not a lot, but a little bit older than most of our community. And I think those few years are really important because I've had just a little bit more time to stew on whether I should really be wasting my time watching Halloween 4 again ever in my life. And for you, it may be a no-brainer that, yeah, you should, because you're still getting a lot of enjoyment. You're loving those movies. For me, I look forward, and if I live to be 90 years old, I have to face the fact that means I have 40 more years to live, which is less time than I've lived up to now. There's less days ahead than behind. So what I spend time watching is going to be determined largely by what haven't I seen before. Now, that's not saying I'm not going to revisit my favorites. I, of course, will. I'm not trying to be a hypocrite in any way possible here. But what I am saying is that until the world of American cinema catches up with the modern age, instead of trying to reflect the past constantly, I think I'm going to have to look to overseas at least for the foreseeable future. Just to give you a snapshot of the moment when this is being recorded, right now the two biggest films in the country, by most measures, would be a Godzilla vs. Kong movie and a Ghostbusters film. Now, I liked the Godzilla vs. Kong film, though I didn't love it. I did not enjoy the Ghostbusters film. I did go see both of them. I was excited genuinely by neither. It was about 5 years ago that I went to the theater to see my first big Indian action spectacular, because I'd seen the trailer on YouTube. I just stumbled across it somehow. I don't know, whatever rabbit hole that it was. And it was a film called Race 3. And Race 3 is a batshit insane film. It's over the top, it's broad, it goes everywhere it wants to go, fearlessly. You get the feeling that someone had an idea for something. No one asked, well, can we do that? That was just never part of the conversation. It just does. There's wingsuits, and there's helicopters chasing down trucks, and there's dirt bikes, and there's lots of fist fights and a lot of shootouts, and there's kung fu, and it's a almost 3-hour film, but it never, ever, ever was boring, and it always looks like a painting on every frame, because the one thing about Indian cinema that America can't seem to just nail is that these films look like films. They look like pieces of art. They look composed. Whereas most American films kind of look thrown together and sloppy to me. Race 3 stars Salman Khan. That was my introduction to Salman Khan. And he's a Hollywood tough guy that happens to be from India, right? No, he's a lot more than that. He's cheeky and self-aware in a way that's sort of similar, I guess, to Schwarzenegger, but not really, because this dude also has this very, 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 I don't know, innate ability to be likable in every moment. And I don't really find that to be the case with Schwarzenegger all the time. There's always that weird thing with Schwarzenegger, whereas, like, even in his heroic roles, it kind of felt like he should be playing the villain. Because he doesn't seem like the boy next door. He doesn't seem like Bruce Willis in Die Hard, right? Whereas it's like a normal guy thrown into an extraordinary circumstances and he rises to the occasion. That was never Schwarzenegger. He never looked like a normal guy. Salman Khan is a big dude. He's muscular. He's fit beyond his years. But he comes off as someone you could meet. And that movie, Race 3, just blew me away because I had so much fun with it. And it was my first time in the audience with a primarily Indian audience watching an event movie. Now, side note, domestically in India, they didn't like the movie. They liked the first 2 films in the series much more, which I don't. I think Race 3 is by far the most fun of the bunch. And that's a reoccurring theme. American tastes and Indian tastes are not always in lockstep. And it's certainly my tastes are a whole different issue to both. But the audience was whooping and hollering and cheering during the movie. Not to be distracting and not for any kind of virtue signaling about how much they love what they see on screen. No, they were just into it in a way I hadn't experienced since the 80s, really. And early 80s, early mid-80s maybe. There was something that happened in American cinema where we got very cynical, and then we actually got kind of combative towards movies, where people go see films they actively don't want to like, or they go to the movie just because whatever's playing, and at one point they were using laser pointers to distract other film goers. I mean, who does that? What is that about? I'm going to tell you, that would not happen with Indian cinema at all. Now, they might light up fireworks if it's Eid and the movie is premiering that they care about in the theater. That happens, but it's all jubilant. These are events. These are like rock concerts. A movie as a party, as a festival. It was a different sort of experience than I'd ever had in my life, but it was a different sort of experience than I thought was possible in film. It was awesome. Since then, I've seen a lot of Indian films, both in the horror genre and the action genre. But one thing I really noticed is that there's no conversation happening domestically about these Indian action films. And the horror films, I kind of understand why they're not discussing, because the horror audience tends to be very insular. But the action community openly pines for the days of big action films like Rambo 3 or True Lies. And the fact is, most of these Indian films make both those films look absolutely small in comparison. But there's no conversation. And I was really disturbed by that. And that's why I wanted to start this series, to kind of spotlight some films that really deserve a lot more attention. Now, I had, in the past, made some attempts in this area. I did do a video on Takad, which is one of my favorite films of all time now. It's in my top 20. It is an insanely good action film, but it's an insanely good film, period. And it looks like $1 million, although that's probably all it cost. The pure joy that these films give me is what I'm talking about. As this series progresses, I'm going to cover some films, but I wanted to spotlight one series in particular. And that would be the YRF Spy Universe. Now, these films are kind of like the Marvel Universe, but all good movies. The first film in the series is called Ek the Tiger, and it's not an action spectacular. It's actually kind of a quiet spy film, almost like the first Mission Impossible film. The sequel was a much bigger action set piece oriented film, but in comparison to what was coming, it was pretty sedate. War is probably a game changer for action films. It is an amazing, intelligent, but over the top, overly emotional, but really satisfying watch with some of the end fight scene of that movie may be the best end fight of any film in history. In fact, I probably will just say I haven't seen every film, but it's got to be in the conversation. That led to Pathan. Last year's Pathan was easily my favorite film of the year. I had so much fun. The audience erupted when there was an extended cameo of a character they didn't expect to see. It was a thrilling film from beginning to end. It hits every note. Man, I grade films on a schoolhouse grade scale of F, D, C, B, and A. It is easily a solid A, tilting towards A+. It's just that good. I don't know who could possibly watch Pathan and not come away a fan. By the way, that was also an interesting experience, whereas if you didn't buy tickets in advance for that movie, in America, you weren't getting a seat. And that was the first 2 weeks solid. So these films are not just getting released here, which is amazing, because that was not always true. They're getting the big screens. I've even seen some of these films in IMAX and RPX. They're getting the big screens because they deliver the audience to the theaters. So people go see these films if they're a part of that community. And that's just not really common. I can walk into the premiere night of any big American blockbuster and get a ticket. That is not true of these films. That's the demand. And I think as it grows, you're going to see more of that. The release of Tiger 3 last year was an event. Again, a theater just losing their minds as this film plays. But you know what? It's an amazing film with an incredible story. So how could I not be excited? These Indian action films make me feel like I used to feel about horror films coming out domestically. And yeah, horror is always closer to my heart. It's what I grew up with. It's what I love. But at the moment, we're just in a place where I want to spend a little bit of time spotlighting something else that I think is providing me with equal entertainment. And we'll see where it goes. Just one quick note, if you do see a listing for an Indian film in America that you're interested in, understand that it is always going to have English subtitles if it's playing on an American screen, unless very specifically stated otherwise. But I'm yet to see a listing for any major release from India not having subs. So you don't have to worry about that. Dubs are very rare. I've heard they exist. None of my local theaters play them. But here's the big thing. I want you to be aware that you're not going to walk in and have to endure endless dance sequences in every film. Sometimes they're there. They're much better integrated than what's in your head and maybe what you've experienced if you saw an Indian film 20 years ago. It's not as intrusive. And the other thing is, these are big pop, rock, hip-hop songs. They're not like traditional Indian, ballads or show tunes like you'd expect. They tend to all be painless. I can't say that my musical tastes have aligned to what I see in these movies in general, but I will say that a lot of them are actually pretty damn good compared to what I hear on pop radio today. Please consider going and giving them the opportunity. The worst you're going to do is see something more original than what comes out in America. Hell, an action film that doesn't star Liam Neeson should be enough to sell you if you like action films. Alright, I'm excited to get started with this series, but for now, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for watching. Please check out all the other shows on the VBV Network. We have a lot of great talent from a lot of great voices. See you next time.